Hey y'all, howdy. Welcome to One for the Books. I'm Sandy Broadwell, and today we're going to talk about my most anticipated releases of 2025. I get so excited about new books. What? So today I'm gonna try and focus mostly on books from either authors I've read from before, series I'm already reading, or series that I was already planning to start in 2025. There's one exception to that, but we'll get into it. And so I have 18 books to talk to you about today. 14 of them are confirmed, either by the publisher or the author, and I have 4 hopefuls that we'll talk about at the end. Also, just a note, the release dates that I have on here are what are available online, but release dates are subject to change, and they do frequently. So this is accurate as of the day that I'm filming this, but take it with a grain of salt. So going in order of anticipated publication date. First up, on January 14th, we have Witchcraft for Wayward Girls by Grady Hendrix. Now, I've just read my first Grady Hendrix book in October this year. I read the Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires, which was a delight. And I love witchy books, so I'm super excited to try more things from this author. Witchcraft for Wayward Girls is supposed to be set in the 1970s, and it is about basically teen girls that get knocked up and their parents send them away to this home in Florida to basically hide their shame until their baby is born and can be put up for adoption. And while the girls are there, they discover a book about the occult and things unravel, I'm assuming. It sounds super cool. Also releasing on January 14th is Death of the Author by Nnedi Okorafor. I read the Binti series by Nnedi Okorafor a couple years ago. It was a sci-fi novella series, which was really unique and really cool. I haven't tried anything else by Nnedi Okorafor yet. This one is supposed to be about an author whose life is kind of in crisis, and she decides to kind of stop everything that she's doing and write this kind of wacky sci-fi novel. And it starts to blur the line between what's her fictional novel and what's her reality. So that sounds intriguing. I love kind of meta books about books, or books about libraries, or books about writers and things like that. So I think that could be a really fun time. Then moving into February, we have Emily Wilde's Compendium of Lost Tales. This is the third and final book, I think, of the Emily Wilde trilogy, which started with Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies. I really loved the first book. The second book was almost as good, but it's a kind of cozy fantasy story about a woman named Emily Wilde who is a scholar that studies fairies, and it's a good time. Moving into March, this is the only book on this list that I have no connection to. I haven't read this author before. It's not part of a series I'm a part of. It's not part of a series that I was anticipating starting. I think it is just a standalone kind of sci-fi thriller, but it just sounds so cool that I wanted to give it a go. And this is called The Third Rule of Time Travel by Philip Fracassi. The description says, Rule 1, travel can only occur to a point within your own lifetime. Rule 2, you can only travel for 90 seconds. Rule 3, you can only observe. The rules cannot be broken. It's about this scientist named Beth and her husband who invented this time travel, and when her husband dies, she has to raise their daughter by herself, and suddenly every time she starts to go back and observe, things about her modern life are changing, which shouldn't be possible. And I just think that sounds so cool and intriguing, and I love time travel. So yeah, I just want to give this one a little shout out. Then moving into April, there are 4 new releases in April I'm excited about, so April is pretty stacked. Faithbreaker by Hannah Connor is the third book of the Fallen Gods trilogy, which starts with God Killer. And I picked up God Killer at a used bookstore recently. I've heard really great things about it, and I've heard from everyone who likes it that it's been a pretty underhyped series. I also just think the covers for the series are absolutely beautiful, so I'm definitely planning on kicking off God Killer in 2025, and hopefully I'll really enjoy it and be able to pick up Faithbreaker as well. Then on April April 8th, we have The Book That Held Her Heart by Mark Lawrence. This is the third book in the Library trilogy, which kicked off with The Book That Broke the World. The Book That Wouldn't Burn. I absolutely loved the first book in this series. It had so many intriguing plot twists that I did not see coming, and it really kind of blew me away. The second book in the trilogy followed some different characters and a different storyline that really added to the world building. I didn't think the plot was quite as good, but I'm still really intrigued to see where this series is going, and I really have a good time with Mark Lawrence's plots. So excited to see how this trilogy is going to wrap up. Following that, on April 15th, we have The Ashfire King by Chelsea Abdullah. This is book 2 of the Sand Sea trilogy, which started with The Stardust Thief. So this is following a character named the Midnight Merchant and her Djinn companion as they try and uncover some magical artifacts and the hijinks that happen along the way. I thought that the first book was so fun. The characters felt very complex and real, and the plot was really fun and fast-paced, and I thought this book was actually coming out in 2024, and then it got pushed to 2025, so I am very excited to finally pick back up the Sand Sea trilogy. Then on April 29th, we have The Witch's Guide to Magical Innkeeping, which is a companion novel set in the same world as The Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches, which was a cozy fantasy, kind of cozy romance type of book that I read 2 years ago when it came out, and that one was just so fun. I binged it in a day, and I was kicking my little feet because it was just so cute. And like I said, I love witchy books, and a cozy witchy book just sounds like a super fun time. Moving into the month of May, we have The Devils by Joe Abercrombie, which is supposed to come out on May 6th. This one I've heard is kind of a classic fantasy adventure journey and is also supposed to have Joe Abercrombie's signature, great characters and humor. So I'm excited to try this one out. This will be my first Joe Abercrombie that's not part of the First Law World books, which there's 9 of those, and I'm actually in the middle of the very last one of those right now. So it'll be exciting to continue my Joe Abercrombie journey and see what he does outside of the First Law. Additionally, on May 6th, we have The Strength of the Few by James Islington. This is book 2 of the Hierarchy, which starts with The Will of the Many. I have not read The Will of the Many. It was one of the most hyped fantasy books that came out last year, and I still haven't gotten around to it, but the fact that the second book in the series is coming out is really pushing me to pick it up. So I am definitely going to pick up The Will of the Many in 2024. I hope I love it as much as everyone else. The Will of the Many is supposed to be kind of a spy, academic, Roman-inspired fantasy story, I believe, with a lot of politics. So that all sounds fantastic, and I can't wait to give it a go. Then this one I'm a little more shaky on because the anticipated release date is listed differently in different places, and this series has just been going on for a long time, so I really just don't know how much I can trust the information that's out there. But Lord of Demons, which is supposed to be book 3 of The Burning, which starts with The Rage of Dragons by Evan Winters. Book 3 of this series is supposed to be coming out in 2025. I have one release date that says May 8th and another one that says October 14th. Who knows if either of those are true? But this is supposed to be a revenge tale, a military academy, and there are dragons involved, and I'm all about those things. Then we have a big time skip. I have many months in a row with no anticipated releases. That doesn't mean there aren't fantastic books coming out at that time or that more books won't be announced in the meantime, but for now, these are the ones that I know about. So next up, on August 28th, 2025, we are supposed to get Catabasis by R.F. Kuang. I adore R.F. Kuang. She has written the Poppy War trilogy, Yellowface, and Babel, and I have loved all 5 of those books. So I've read everything she's ever put out, and I'm very excited to try her next book. This is supposed to be about 2 academic rivals that have to go to hell to save their advisor, which just sounds honestly kind of stupid, but I'm here for it. I trust R.F. Kuang, and I'm ready. Then the last one that I have an actual anticipated release date for is on October 9th, 2025, and that is The Last Contract of Isako by Fonda Lee. Fonda Lee is the author of the Green Bone Saga, which is the Jade City series. And I didn't necessarily love that series as much as everyone else did. I thought the first and second books were good, but not great. And then the third book totally shattered my world and made me reevaluate my love for the entire series because the third book was so good. And this is supposed to be a sci-fi book by Fonda Lee. Let me just read you the description of this because, oh my God. It just says, inspired by samurai movies and Fonda's former business career, The Last Contract of Isako is a searing space opera like no other that takes aim squarely at late-stage capitalism. Get ready to meet an aging contractor, Isako, whose final mission thrusts her deep into a world of espionage and sword fights on an isolated colony planet. Take my money. I am so here for this. Then we have Shadows Upon Time by Christopher Rocchio. This is the seventh and final book of the Sun Eater series, which starts with The Empire of Silence. Now, I'm only 2 books into this series so far, and the second book did not impress me nearly as much as the first one did, so I've been a little hesitant, but I've heard that the third book, which will be the next one for me, is supposed to be like levels above the first 2 books, and it's like many people's favorite book in the series, so I'm not giving up. I'm going into book 3 and I'm super excited to continue this series. Everyone who reads it just seems to absolutely love it. So this is the 7th and final book of the series. So if I read book 3 and it blows me out of the water, then of course I will continue and hopefully finish the entire series. This does not have a release date yet, but I'm pretty sure the author has said that it is definitely coming out in 2025. Then I have a list of 4 hopefuls that don't have a release date and is unknown whether they're going to come out in 2025, but I feel like there's a good chance they will. So I'm putting them on this list and hoping that by putting these vibes out into the world, that the publishers and authors will hear me and just make it happen. So first up, we have Alecto the Ninth, which is the 4th and I believe final book of the Gideon the Ninth series. I recently picked up Gideon the Ninth in a book haul this year. I have not started this series yet, and all I know about it is it's lesbian necromancers in space, and that it's supposed to be super weird. And I love that. I think the covers for this series are super cool, and I would absolutely love to be able to start and finish the series within the same year. So super hopeful for Alecto the Ninth. Then we have Red God by Pierce Brown, which is the 7th and final book of the Red Rising saga. I read the first trilogy of this series. I have not started the second trilogy quartet yet, but I'm really hopeful that Red God will come out this year and that I will again be able to start and finish the final series of the Red Rising saga in the same year. I know that the second series for a lot of fans is the better of the 2, so I'm very excited to give that a go. These last 2 books don't even have titles yet, so I'm being super optimistic by throwing this out there. But I still feel like there's a good chance because the first one is going to be book 2 in the Amina Al-Sarafi series by Shannon Chakraborty. I adore Shannon Chakraborty. The Daevabad trilogy is one of my favorites of all time, and I absolutely will be putting The Adventures of Amina Al-Sarafi in one of my best books of the year for this year. It's a older lady pirate adventure where she has to get the band back together for one last gig type of thing, and it's absolutely delightful. That book came out 2 years ago. There was no announcement this year, so that I'm hopeful that means that in 2025 we'll at least get some new info about when the sequel is coming out, because I believe that is also supposed to be a trilogy. And there were so many good plot hooks at the end of book 1 that just make me so excited for where book 2 is gonna go. And then finally, book 2 of The Captives' War by James S.A. Corey. The first book came out this year. It was The Mercy of Gods. It was absolutely a delightful science fiction about an alien invasion that completely takes over the human planet and subjugates the entire species, like right within the first few chapters of the book. It was so wild to read about, and there's so many cool otherworldly aspects to it. I just absolutely loved all the world building and the human psychological dynamics that occurred in this book. So there hasn't been any announcement that I know of about book 2 coming out yet, but they have already released a short story to go along with this series. And if I remember correctly from when James S. A. Corey was working on The Expanse, they were pretty consistently releasing a book every year or every other year. So I feel like there's a good chance that book 2 of The Captive's War will come out pretty soon. So that's it. Those are my 18 most anticipated releases of 2025. Let me know down in the comments below what your most anticipated releases are for the year that I didn't mention, or maybe what your favorite or most anticipated book off of this list is. And I'd love to hear about what you're excited to read in 2025. Thanks so much for hanging out. As always, be kind, read more books, and hit the subscribe button down below for more bookish content to come. I'll see you next time.